Head fart, go! Alright, I said I'm gonna talk about it, and now I'm talking about it. Dean Blunt, black metal, let's go. Dean Blunt, or as I like to call him, Daniel Bluntaniel, is an experimental music producer hailing from the UK! UK? What does that stand for? Ugly crackers? But Dean Blunt is such an outsider to begin with, and in the grand scheme of the people of the UK, he's actually a pretty normal human being from what I can tell. Dean Blunt got a start in a group called Hype Williams, which started allegedly in 2005, according to Wikipedia, and featured himself and Inga Copeland, another experimental music artist. Much of the albums in the Hype Williams catalog would go on to lay the foundation for what Dean Blunt would do going into the future, but I haven't listened to any of the Hype Williams stuff, so I wouldn't know for sure. An album which I have listened to is Black Metal, which came out in 2014, and despite the name, it is not black metal, it's actually very atmospheric pop music. Well, that's kind of a bastardization of what this album is capable of. Atmospheric pop music is putting it lightly, because yes, it is very atmospheric, but it only gets the bare bones of what pop music really is. The songwriting and compositional elements of this album are super skeletal, like very skeletal. On top of that, there's some weird left turns on here as well. Like there's a 13-minute track on here called Forever, which it definitely feels like it's taking forever, because it's 13 minutes, and it definitely shows its runtime. That's not to say that Forever stays stagnant or anything. It goes in a lot of different directions. Like, there's a saxophone solo. There's this weird, like, feedbacky drum machine that comes in and does some weird stuff. There's this wailing, distorted synth or guitar that comes in and out. It does a lot of things, but it's very drawn out. Again, it's very drawn out. The rest of the album is pretty straightforward from here on out, or at least as straightforward as you can get with an album like this. Stylistically, though, this album finds a middle ground between all over the place and consistent. The first track on here, Lush, it features these lush string sections accompanied by Dean Blunt's signature vocals, which are incredibly apathetic and deadpan. On the flip side of this, you have track titles which are just complete lies. You have Punk, which is this experimental reggae jam, or you have Country, which is this insane synth freakout complete with slap bass and, you know, like the little sound effects you hear when you press up or down on the volume of a Macintosh. You know the one, like the little pop noise. Yes, that one. That's the one I'm talking about. You know the one. I knew you knew the one. The main thing that sets this apart from other atmospheric pop music like the Cocteau Twins or Enya or Drake, I guess, is that there's a certain uncanniness to the way that Dean Blunt produces his music. A big part of this probably has to do with, again, Dean's vocals, which are very lethargic and apathetic. It could be that Dean Blunt's making a commentary on how pop artists don't really care about the music they're making, yet sound like they're making music that they care about. So Dean Blunt does the opposite of that. It sounds like he doesn't care about the music he's making when he actually does. Or maybe I'm just smoking crack. Another facet of this album that makes up for its weirdness is the production, which, while not drenched in reverb, is incredibly cavernous. The instrumentals on here surround you with sound, but they never smother you with it. The instrumental palette also gets more off-kilter as the album progresses. You have tracks like 100 and 50 Cent, which sound like they could be pretty normal songs had they not been made by Dean Blunt. On the back end of the album, however, you have tracks like Mersh and Grade, which sound otherworldly and far more intimidating than how the album started out with. However, this album still sounds consistent front to back, again, thanks to that cavernous production. Black metal is a lot of things, still, but if I was to sum it up in one phrase, it would be the sound of pop music that never hit the charts. It's pop music that had so much potential, but never got the spotlight of the Madonnas and the Depeche Modes of the eras it came from, and thus it remained in the dark. Oh, that's why it's got that album cover. I get it now. That makes sense. That makes a lot more sense now. Yeah, I get it. A lot of the stuff in this album is very all over the place. I like to call this kind of music void pop, because it sounds like pop music from the void. If you want to get into more about that or more of an explanation, I have another video kind of defining what that is, and it's actually a part of the series I'm doing on what I consider void music. You can check that out on my channel, videos tab. I assume you know how to use YouTube, but I'm sure there's some people who are watching my video for the first time who have no idea how the hell YouTube works in the first place, so I know you're out there. A bit of an update for this channel. I've been working on a couple of music projects with and without people. But most importantly, I have a Bandcamp in my channel info, so if you'd like to check out my music and maybe even support me financially, You can check that out. I got a couple albums, some of which are even inspired by this album that I just talked about. So if you like this album, you might like my music. Humble brag, I know. I know. I also have a couple other videos coming out soon. I'm going to try and get those out before the end of the year. Namely, I'm going to do a video on Cowboy Music by Cersei, Mr. Silly Flow by Tisa Korean, and the sequel to Black Metal, Black Metal 2, also by Dean Blunt. So we'll see which one comes out first. It's probably going to be Tisa Korean, though. So, sorry.